Hello friends, I'm so excited to bring this message to you today. I believe that this message will bring some shift in your thinking. I really hope that you'll catch the revelation that's behind my words, because it's the revelation, not some new information, that will transform our lives. Well, I've titled today's message as "What is in your hand?" We see quite often God and in the Bible asks his people, what is in your hand? Moses was called by God to go and speak to his people, Israelites, and to Pharaoh. And we see Moses asking in turn to God, how will they believe me? And God says, what is in your hand? And Moses shows the staff. He says, staff. And he says, throw the staff on the ground and it becomes a snake. And we know the rest of the story, how God uses Moses mightily with what he had to perform some great signs and wonders. In fact, when Moses and all the Israelites are standing in front of the Red Sea, God says to Moses, why do you cry out to me? Raise your staff and stretch forth your hand. And we know what happened. The Red Sea parted. If we move on to the next very familiar story in the Bible, David and Goliath. We see on one hand, the well-trained army of Israel, they were terrified by this giant. And yet we see David running towards this giant with what he had. Just those 5 stones and a sling. In fact, it sounded almost so stupid that Goliath laughed at him. And yet we know that he killed this giant with what he had. Joseph used the gift of interpretation of dreams to solve Pharaoh's problem, and he became the prime minister of the most powerful nation at that time. If we have to jump to New Testament, we see when the tax collectors come and ask Peter, doesn't your teacher pay temple tax? And then Jesus actually tells Peter to go to the lake and catch the fish. And the very first fish he was to catch, in its mouth was 4 drachma coin that he instructed him to pay the tax from. God spoke to me through this particular passage of scripture a few years ago when I was facing a particular financial challenge. And God asked me the same question, Ajay, what do you have in your hand? I really had to take an inventory of what I had in my life. Then I could only come up with my job, my career, my profession. And I trusted God with that. And God opened a door which led me to have an increase in my finances, and I was able to meet that need, and God caused a breakthrough in that season. Quite often we confuse things, we complicate things, and yet what God is really looking for is simply what we have in our lives. Because when we bring what we have in front of God, God brings about a breakthrough that we've never dreamed of. I really challenge you to go before God, to seek God and ask Him to show you what's in your hand for your current situation. God's ways are sometimes so simple that we can easily miss them. And we can see that throughout the scripture. I really trust that God has ministered to you, and I stand with you in prayer, and I believe that God will do some significant things in your life this very year. Well, God bless you, my friends. Remember to seek His kingdom first, and as you do so, all the things that the world is seeking after, God will add it unto you. Bye-bye.